Hey guys, today's story is about a warlock whose patron is themselves. A while back, a friend of mine, who we'll just refer to as the DM, offered to DM for me and a few other friends, and they were the only one of us who had played before, and both of her older brothers both DM'd, so we assumed that she knew the rules pretty well. Spoiler, she didn't. I wanted to play a support character, so I ended up making a half-elf cleric, with little to no help from her, and the other players made a drow bard and a tiefling fighter. There was a fourth player, but he only showed up to 3 sessions, and we had other players that only showed up sporadically, but overall aren't important to the story. My cleric was neutral good, which is pretty standard for a life cleric. They were a little bit of a flirt, but mostly took on a more motherly and nurturing role. The bard was a chaotic good, and was an escaped drow with an astronomically low intelligence. And I do want to say here that the bard was not, in any means or way, the problem of this story. I actually quite adored his character. The problem was the fighter, who was chaotic evil. And I don't want to go too far into the campaign premise, as those two players use Reddit. But anyway, let's go on. The fighter and my cleric clashed a lot. Not only was he reluctant to let them touch him, such as to cast Cure Wounds or other such touch range spells, but he repeatedly argued with them on every possible decision, and ended up splitting the party on multiple occasions because he wanted to go and be a murder hobo. And he initiated PvP with my character multiple times, simply because they disagreed with him. Naturally, the cleric became reluctant to heal or assist him, and began focusing their efforts on the bard. And the fighter complained about this, out of character, multiple times, as he was supposed to be the party tank. But if you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. This was made all the more frustrating by the fact that early on in the campaign, our characters had an event where we lived through each other's proudest moments, and found the most treasured item of the other, and shared nightmares. After that happened, my character tried to bond, or at least see his side of things, but was shut down with one-word answers, and a relationship that could have turned into a cleric helping a fighter redeem himself, or a fighter bringing a cleric to the dark side, turned into me talking at a brick wall. And now, the issues with the DM herself. Everyone that played in the campaign, with the exception of one guy that showed up for maybe 2 sessions, was AFAB, myself being non-binary and 2 players being trans males. The DM consistently brought up the fact that she was the only one who had touched a dong, in response to casual dirty jokes, and such, to the immense and obvious discomfort of her 3 trans players. Even if I was cis, I probably would have been uncomfortable with how frequently she brought up her own sex life. She also had the tendency to think of herself as better than others, especially in regards to political issues like homophobia, racism, etc. She also pushed things at me that she thought would fix my ADHD, and anxiety and other issues, saying that I just needed to get out of my comfort zone. My character spoke a ton of languages, easily covering all the common languages, as well as Celestial and a few other ones. And the DM not once, but twice made up languages that my character didn't speak, forcing us to rely on a warlock that joined the campaign late. As the only consistent player, the warlock's alignment? Chaotic evil. The warlock's patron? Herself. The DM thought it was interesting, so she allowed it. No proper abilities from patrons, no proper subclass that was ever sat down and actually homebrewed, nothing. The DM was also a big fan of undead encounters. But here's the thing, since she made almost all the encounters up herself on the spot, they never had a proper CR, rendering my abilities related to the undead all but useless. So much of the campaign was made up on the spot that we barely were playing D&D anymore. She made up spells multiple times, spells which didn't have proper levels or categories, so I couldn't properly use detect magic, protections from spells, or dispel magic. And the one encounter that made me realize just how bad this campaign actually was came towards the end of it. By then, I had joined other campaigns online and seen how players and DMs should actually be interacting and how D&D should go. I stayed in the campaign as the sole healer, since I would have felt bad if I had left. And we woke up in an arena and were told that we had to fight each other, not to the death, to speak to the head of the place. The Warlock and fighter immediately ganged up on my character and acted annoyed both in and out of character when the cleric didn't just sit there and take that. I pulled out all the stops in fighting back, with spirit guardians up the whole time and immediately recasting when dropped. Guiding bolt being cast at the highest level I could and using healing on myself, etc. I ended up losing this fight because a homebrew fighting move that the fighter knew, but that in of itself didn't annoy me. The DM told me to roll, so I rolled, and I succeeded. Then the DM told me to roll again, which, okay, disadvantage, whatever, and I succeeded again. Then the DM had me roll for a third time, and I met the DC, and she decided it failed anyway. Was this for a plot reason? No. She just thought it wasn't realistic that a healer could be winning the fight, and that was the last straw for me. And after that, I kept making excuses to not show up, and then Corona happened and became a very convenient excuse for me. And in case you're wondering, the cleric did actually get a happy ending with another party. I entered them in a different campaign, and the party took an immediate liking to them. They got to act out their slight naivete and flirtiness instead of how quickly they had been forced into exhaustion and player hurting with the other group. And they ended up marrying one of the other PCs. And that player and I will now be playing their kids in the second half of the campaign. Well guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, I have a Discord link in the description if you would like to chat and hang out. But, as always, have a good one.